Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, he's a nationally known sales expert. He's my friend. Scott Schilling is in the studio. Next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
All right, so I am a boomer, and I think I grew up along hard knocks. I mean, you didn't get anything for free. You got to earn everything that you got. You got to earn that allowance. You got to work for it. And unfortunately, I'm a boomer, so I gave birth to a couple of hardworking young people, but they don't have the same stick-to-itiveness that I do. And I think this next generation after that is even more, let's call it spoiled. They never got told no. They got a trophy for showing up at soccer camp. So sales across the country, across industries, is really suffering right now. To talk about that, a nationally known expert, Scott Schilling. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jeff.
Yeah.
Always fun.
Well, I don't want to demean an entire generation, but my father grew up during the Great Depression. I don't have the same work ethic that he did, and I think every generation is getting a little softer. But when it comes to sales, you actually gotta enjoy hearing the word no in order to learn something, don't you?
Well, for sure. I mean, you're going to hear no a whole lot more than you ever hear yes in your career, and you have to understand a couple things. Number one, they weren't doing business with you before you started talking. If they say no, they're still not doing business. Nothing got worse. It might not have gotten better, but it didn't get worse. So the reality is it's just part of the process, and you just have to get accustomed to it.
And you've been doing sales training now for decades. How many, give me some of your accolades. How many stages have you spoken on? How many people have you spoken to?
I've spoken on over 3,000 live events, personally sold $25 million or more from stage, and probably had 1 million people or more in seats in front of me. And as the front man, I ate infomercials, a whole lot more on TV.
And have you noticed, has the audience changed? And again, I don't want to bag on the 20-somethings, but they're looking for quality of life. They're not necessarily looking to make 500 phone calls a day. So have you noticed that your talk, is it resonating with the audience the way it would have 20 years ago?
Well, yes, because as a speaker, you have to present a talk that does resonate with the audience. And there's generational communication differences. There's no doubt about that fact. As boomers, we walked 15 miles both ways to school in the snow each way every day. And that was always a challenge. I remember my dad saying that way back when, right? And now we have the knowledge, the expertise, the experience, the wisdom that's gained by becoming more mature. That's code word for older. And the younger generation have the energy, the drive, the enthusiasm, the determination that we need. The very best combination today is putting a boomer or more mature person who has learned it differently with the younger generations that have this energy and excitement about them. Yes. You put them together, it's an unstoppable combination.
We're going to pull up your website, and I remember looking at your bio, and I mean, you've been hanging around the greats for a decade or two. A great Zig Ziglar, a Les Brown, and name some others.
Oh, Colin Powell, Stephen Forbes, Rudy Giuliani, Laura Bush,
yes,
Lou Holtz, Terry Bradshaw. I mean, was blessed to be here. I pretty much shared the stage with every name you know. You might not know mine, but you know theirs.
Absolutely. And do you still get the same adrenaline rush that you did when you first started speaking?
Absolutely. It's, the enthusiasm that you can add to the audience. And It's because you're delivering a solid message, something that it's kind of when people say, well, do you like to speak or train more? Well, speaking is awesome. You're a rock star, Thank you, Dallas. It's been great. But training, you see the flash in somebody's eyes. You see wow, something just landed that is going to make a difference in their life for the rest of their life. Now, that sticks with you. That's awesome.
You told me a story about your first sales call. And how old were you and where were you?
Well, my dad was speaking at the Toastmasters International Convention in LA, and we took the train from Milwaukee to LA. That's a first hint. And literally, as we were on our trek from Milwaukee to LA, I walked up and down the aisles yelling, tickets, tickets, who needs tickets? And people would say, I do. And I scribbled on a pad of paper, I ripped it off, handed it to them. They gave me change. I ended up having $52 in change by the time we got to LA. I was 4. And I was already selling them tickets to the train they were on.
That's a man who is born to sell. We found a speaker reel. You have several out there, but this one is my favorite. Let's go ahead and roll it.
I've been in business specializing in sales and marketing since 1980. I'm an executive coach, an international trainer and speaker, an author, a TV show host, husband, and father. Like many, I've experienced a freak accident and almost died from it. The impact from a hit to the back of my head dissected an artery in my brain, and a few days later, I had a significant cerebellar stroke. Since my stroke, I've been researching and seeking answers to many of the questions that come to light when you live through a traumatic event like this. I'll share what I've learned about living full out, how to prosper in difficult times. We'll talk about some current events, and always end with some inspiration and encouragement that you just might need at this particular moment. This is Scott Schilling Speaks.
Well, let's talk about that traumatic event. Fully recovered?
Oh, yeah. I was back on stage in 23 days. It was...
No kidding.
I take zero credit. It's by the grace, mercy, and favor of God in my life.
And so tell us how that changed the way you view your life.
Well, I think anybody who goes through a near-death experience, if you don't use it to reflect and examine your life, you really got a challenge. I had a full-blown cerebellar stroke, and for anybody who understands the cerebellum, it's responsible for speech, memory, fine motor skills, walking, talking, vertigo. By the grace of God, I come out like this, wow. Right? So I believe God saved my life to do great things. My mission statement, amongst other things, is to positively impact 1 billion or more lives on the planet. I've done a fair amount of that. I haven't done all of it or near enough of it, and so that's why we're here today.
Wow, and you're a prolific writer. How many books have you written?
23.
23, that's incredible. I want to focus on your latest book. Let's go ahead and put this up on the screen. 90-second success tips. 104 tips to sell more with less effort. Let's talk about this. What's in the book?
Well, it's really the basics, the fundamentals. We get smart over time, don't we?
Yes, we do.
We get a little older, and all of a sudden we get so smart, and we stop doing the things that made us successful in the first place. And I was looking at a side drive of material I had, and it was the material that helped take one of my clients from 8 million to 100 million in a little less than 6 years. Wow, obviously pretty successful. And I was taught never put in a $20 book what you could get $20,000 in a seminar for. So it was sitting in a side drive, not doing me any good, not doing the world any good, not doing anybody any good. And I said, this is crazy. And so I was able to put it out, get it on Amazon in 5 days.
Wow.
And it is the basics, the foundations, fundamentals. I was blessed. I played 5 sports growing up. And my coaches always taught the fundamentals. You saw the lack of fundamentals in the Eagles-Washington game the other day.
Yes.
Saquon Barkley flies left. A guy takes a 32-inch thigh and tries to tackle it with a 5-inch forearm.
Yes.
Not going to work. You need the shoulder. That's a fundamental. Well, sales, talking to people, meeting and greeting people, those are all fundamentals. So the very first tip in that book is capture interest and attention. In order to create a relationship with somebody, you have to first capture their interest and attention. You have to, get them at ease by being at ease.
Yes.
You have to do these things. Second one is be in tune. Good Lord was on our side. He gave us 2 ears, 1 mouth. Probably supposed to listen twice as much as you talk. So these aren't rocket surgery. These are the tips, the fundamentals. But when you put them all together, what you find is you'll have greater relationships. It'll be easier to talk to people. You'll be able to take them on the path to what serves them better.
Yes.
And you'll be able to do it easy. And it's all in bite-sized pieces, 90-second tips at a time.
Yes. Let's talk about the connection, because I find that so many young salespeople are like they memorize the script and they know that if you say this, then they say this, but there's something hollow about the experience because you feel like you're just talking to an empty suit. Talk about the ability to be on the same planet as the person you're with.
Well, the reality is that the person who knows why they will take action or won't take action is the person you're talking to. So when you use, and scripts are fine to a certain extent, but you've got to be able to then customize them and or find out how that script is going to serve the person you're talking to. I subscribe to the Zig Ziglar rule of thumb. You can have everything in life when you help enough other people get what they want.
Yes.
So it's a positioning thing. It's about finding out. When somebody objects to a sale, the only person who knows why they objected is them. Don't try to sell them anymore.
Yeah.
Say something really novel like, what's holding you back? See, they can now give you the path to go on to serve them. They're there to purchase. You're there to present something for purchase. You've got to coordinate that in the middle. It's much easier than people make it, and that's why this book is so fundamental, we grew a company from 8 million to 100 million putting in these simple things, but everybody used the simple things.
Yes.
And that consistency made the difference.
And I think people have kind of a mental block. When they think of salesperson, they think of like a used car salesperson who's too pushy, and great sales is just a great conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the Webster's definition is the exchange of a product, good, or service for an amount of money or its equivalent. Sometimes people get hung up on the money side of it, so I suggest, well, the equivalent is it makes your heart feel good. So part of it is reframing the definition, but I created my heart-centered selling definition, which is education through communication without manipulation. What it does is it allows you to reframe as a teacher. I am here to teach you about the features, advantages, and benefits of my products, goods, and services that will satisfy your needs, wants, and desires.
Perfect. Wow, you are so good. I could listen to you for hours. You sent us several pictures, and we're going to put them up on the screen, and I want you to just kind of go through. What are we looking at?
That was a Get Motivated event in Detroit. That was a blast. That was a lot of fun. Boy, those were the days when you could put thousands and thousands of people. You know, whether you do 25,000 in an arena, 25 in a room, or even 2, it's about them, those who are sitting in the seat. So it's just so much fun to be on stage doing that.
Do you remember this one?
I do. Actually, that was the Plano Women's Chamber.
Wow.
There were 102 women in the room. And, I said, what's so funny is I just said, sometimes you got to fight through some things. Like not so long ago, I had a near-death experience. And one of the women came up to me and she said, "Did you say you had a cerebellar stroke?" And I said, "Yeah, I did." She goes, "People don't live through those." And I said, "Well, I'm an overachiever. I lived." And she said, "Well, I'm with the American Heart and Stroke Association." I said, "Great, use me."
Wow.
And she said, "Well, we can't pay you." I said, "I didn't say pay me. I said, use me. If this story can serve some other people, use the story."
Yes.
Well, we ended up putting the American Heart Association with a nutraceutical company. We created some galas, and we had 3 galas raised pretty close to $750,000.
No kidding. I think we might have a couple more slides.
Sure.
What's that?
That was about 200 people in a financial company out in LA, or out in Calabasas, actually out in the LA area. Just wonderful. We trained, John Shin said, "Scott, would you come out here and train for an hour?" I've never given anybody more than an hour in front of my people. and I said, I'll give them the best hour I got. Well, that was at the end of 16 hours.
Oh my
I literally we trained for 16 hours, and that's how enthusiastic everybody was afterwards.
Okay, one more slide.
Ooh, Singapore, never work again. That was a fun event. That's actually where I created my pre-event prayer. That audience was about 5,600. I looked out. Wow. At the time, it was the biggest audience I had spoken in front of, and I went, God, I need some help. And so I created my pre-event prayer. Lord, allow the words I share here today to positively impact 100% of the lives in this audience, one way, shape, or form. Only you know who you sent here to hear this message. Allow me to do the best I can to deliver this message, be a vehicle and of service to you.
Yes.
And what's funny is I created it backstage. I got introduced. I walked on stage, and the first thing I did is I gave that to the audience.
Did you? It's
did.
beautiful. And it's, if you can tell, his eyes are getting soft because I just heard your heart very loud and clear. In fact, I have this theory that if you're up on stage and you're thinking about the money or the back of the room sales or whatever you're thinking about, it short circuits your connection with the audience. So you actually have to kind of give away the gold for free, right?
Selling isn't, in my opinion, it's not an intellectual or tactical process. It's a heartfelt, strategic, relational process.
Yeah.
You got to take the 14-inch journey
From
your head to your heart. You got to drop down in here. I understand when I'm on stage, I'm third. The promoter is number one. The audience is number two. I'm third at best. It's about serving them, their needs, what they came there for, what they're looking for, the solutions that serve them. And when you drop into that mode, the rest takes care of itself.
It does.
If
It
you
does.
do a really good job, you know this, Jeff. I mean, we've shared the stage together. You're an expert at this. You know, when we've done events together, you know, you've just been phenomenal on stage, and you touch hearts as well.
Thank you. Well, I think you and I are both servants. And so with a minute left, final thoughts. What would you like to leave people with?
You know, I know that there's a lot of people right now that are concerned about AI, and AI is going to take over everything. AI is going to take over a lot of things. It's got some great attributes. But here's one thing. It will never take over being a human being. It will never have empathy. It will never have compassion. And that's why it's more important today than ever to learn how to speak to each other. We are social beings. We've been designed to speak to each other. Boomer generation and older, we were kind of taught to speak to people. X's, millennials, Z's, not so much. Not a judgment, just a fact. Okay, guess what? I want to help. If other boomers don't, that's up to them. I do. I want to help people live a more happy, fulfilled, satisfying life. I want you to get to your fulfillment faster. The way you're going to do that is with cooperation of other people. People do business and life with people.
Outstanding. Drop the mic. We're going to end with the website, which is scottschilling.com. The great Scott Schilling. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it.
That's it for now. We'll see you next time.